All right, everybody, you can take your seats. Greetings, everyone. And we have had a few more people show up. Hopefully, there are still more coming. I get to introduce some speakers now. And these first two, I got to are we not picking up?
You're introducing two speakers? No, you're introducing one speaker.
But then I'm introducing somebody after her, too.
Yes, okay.
And there's a connection. When you're an ENTP, everything's got connections. Each of these next two, I first became aware of when I was looking for a vice president. I had gone through that whole primary season thinking that Joshua Perkins was going to be my vice president, and then he got the message from his employer that he could only do that if he took a leave of absence for the whole duration of the campaign. And that was not feasible. And so people started giving me names. And I was cold calling candidates. Hi, I'm the presidential nominee of a party that you've probably never heard of. Would you like to be my vice president? And that puts you in the category with Nigerian princes. And so, but what came out of it, I made some really nice friendships. And both Destiny, who is speaking now, and George, who is speaking next, have now been Facebook friends with me for 4 years, and I value them. And Destiny Herndon-De La Rosa writes for the Dallas newspaper, and she is the founder and driving force in New Age Feminists. And something that has really impressed me over the last couple of years, she got it in her heart to build a pro-life center just across the border to minister to refugees who are arriving pregnant and families. I'll just have to introduce you because otherwise I'm going to cry. Destiny.
Thank you so much. Okay, so yeah, I actually knew about the ASP before Brian called me. Not to brag, but I have Facebook, and when you complain enough about hating politics and everybody involved in it, then people automatically start recommending ASP to you, like, quite a bit. And so everybody's very excited. Like, this is the party, this is the one that you need to align with. I don't know if I've just been so burned by growing up the way that I was, very entrenched in a political party, and then seeing just weird happen. But I was joking earlier with Jack that I'm an anarchist now, which is not true. I'm an independent who complains a lot, which is kind of an anarchist. That actually decided a few years ago, I was at an event at Berkeley, and so like the wokest of the woke, and I'm moderately woke, and so these are my people. And I remember somebody said, well, you know, for the last few years I've been politically homeless, and then somebody countered and said, the term is actually unhoused. And so that's politically unhoused doesn't make sense, that's weird. And so I've decided that to not be controversial, I am going to label myself politically non-binary now. Anyone has a problem with that, but I think I will probably be an independent till the day that I die at this point, because I just want to fight with everyone all the time. However, I have very little to fight with you guys about. I really love a lot of what the ASP platform is, because my organization is the Consistent Life Ethic Group. And so it is womb to tomb nonviolence. We're secular, so there's not really, I would say that's where it kind of has the more libertarian non-aggression principle. Be weird, I don't care about that, that's none of my business, but be kind, no aggression towards others, no violence. And so because of that, we are anti-death penalty, anti-torture. We focus on things like police brutality and injustice in those systems. We're pro-migrant. Then we extend it into the womb by also being pro-life when human beings are at their weakest and most vulnerable. And so, needless to say, we're not popular anywhere, which is fine. Usually, we're labeled pro-life feminists. That's kind of the easiest way to make someone's head immediately explode when you're on a flight and they're like, what do you do for a living? And then you say that and they're like, oh, awesome. Wait, no, that doesn't make sense. That shouldn't go together. It really does, though, because if we are talking about feminism as a movement that was started to address patriarchy, which when I say patriarchy, that doesn't mean I hate men. I love men. I have made 2 penises with my body, which I actually think is phenomenal. My body knew how to do that. I have made 2 of them. So, big fan of men. The systems, though, a society that was built by men for men doesn't always accommodate female fertility. And that's what we currently see in our culture, that it's a liability to have children. It is not really welcome in the workforce, in academia. My mom was 19 years old when she got pregnant with me at the University of Texas in Austin. George, horns, right? Isn't that what y'all do? Poke them? Or? Anyway, I didn't go there. I disappointed my whole family. I brought shame to everyone. But she was 19 at the University of Texas at Austin when she got pregnant with me and ended up having to leave college, actually moved back up here to Richardson with my grandparents. Took her 10 years to complete her degree. There was, abuse and poverty and all of these reasons that were given for why someone like me shouldn't have existed. Her life would have been easier if she terminated. But violence isn't the answer. Changing those systems is the answer. And unfortunately, I'm going to be 40 in August. So almost 40 years later, we really haven't seen those systems change all that much. Most young people in college, if they become pregnant, abortion is still a very valid option for them because of the systemic issues, because we live in a society that does not adequately provide just safety nets and basic decency. My mother's incredibly lucky to have family that did support her. I had so many peers growing up who became pregnant, and those were the people who were driving them to the abortion clinic. Those were the ones forcing them even into unwanted adoption scenarios. So when people talk about choice, a lot of times it's when there is no choice that people tend to turn to abortion. It's not that people want an abortion. There's a great Frederica Matthews Green quote, which she's this amazing Quaker pro-life feminist that I adore, where she says, no woman wants an abortion as she wants an ice cream cone or a Porsche. She wants an abortion as an animal with its leg caught in a trap wants to gnaw itself free. And we have one side that's saying, let us help you gnaw your leg free. We want you to get free, which is actually a very compassionate response. But the pro-life feminist side is saying, let us remove the trap. We don't want anyone caught in the trap anymore. You shouldn't have to leave bloody and maimed in order to survive. So we're looking at systemic change, which is a whole lot bigger than the laws. My organization, we really didn't focus on Roe, Dobbs, any of that. Because if we think of it as a ladder, that is the lowest rung, and that took us 49 years to get to. But the systemic change that's actually going to prevent abortions and create a culture of life is going to happen through addressing the fact that a lot of people don't have that organic support system through families. So it's housing, it's healthcare, it's childcare, and it's transportation. Those are the main 4 things that when a pregnant person comes to me, they're struggling with. And we have great people in a lot of the pro-life movement, especially, who they would give the shirt off their back. But when it comes to helping with rent and huge items like that, there isn't a cohesive system yet that really provides those type of things. So I myself, even though more than anyone I knew better, became pregnant at 16. And nobody could have been more angry at me than if someone would have screamed at me or called me a name. That would have felt really good because there was no name I wasn't calling myself. I had already been the child in this situation. I had already struggled so hard on that side of it, and then now I was the terrified teenager. But just like with my mother, I had a roof over my head, food in my mouth, clothes on my back, quality health insurance. All of these things that made it possible for me to choose life. For my son, that is the only reason that I now have a 22-year-old child, and that's what New Wave Feminist was born out of. This feminism that my mother, who by the way would never call herself a feminist, so don't even tell her that I just said that, but she she embodied every bit of that to me. She was this strong, powerful woman who saw that I was not property, right? If we think patriarchy was this view that women are property, and now in order to gain our liberation, we have to pass that same oppression down to other vulnerable human beings, how are we any better than the very thing that we're trying to fight, right? So my mother always knew my humanity. From the moment I first existed, my bodily autonomy was respected. I was kept free from violence. And when I found myself in that same situation, I knew what I had to do. I knew that I had 9 months to make a decision. But again, so many of my friends, I watched them being pressured, being coerced, and being radicalized, quite honestly, because once you go through something like that, then it becomes, I have to justify it, I have to make it okay. That's the culture that we're currently in right now, where I would say the default position, because so many people have been, love somebody who is post-abortive. They, even if it didn't happen to them personally, it's their mother, their sister, their best friend, they become radicalized too, and they make these arguments for why we have to have abortion in order to have an equitable society for women. And that's short-sighted, it's not true, but we can find so much common ground with them as far as what we actually do need. We need these systems and these safety structures in place so that it is not a liability to bring a child into this world. Because I was granted that, that's what I want for my own children, or sorry, not my own children, my own organization, to make sure that people have for their own children, right? No matter what the laws are, when you are in that level of fear and panic and chaos, you will do extreme things because it is absolutely terrifying. And so being that calm in the storm like my family was to me is what I want to do with New Wave Feminists. So I started the organization. It actually had nothing to do with pro-life, anything at the time. There was right here in Plano down the street a restaurant, so kind of like a Hooters type place, and they had this giant billboard that was pornographic. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It wasn't just like a normal like bikini ladies thing. It was just really graphic. And my son was 5 years old at the time, and one was 22, and he looked at it and he's like, "That's not okay." And I was like, "That's not okay." It was right here at this overpass. And so we had to look at it every day. And I was like, well, I'm bored and have too much time on my hands. I'm going to do something about this. And so I wrote a letter to the city council. I went to my very first city council meeting, had no clue how it worked, that you're supposed to be on agendas and things like that, right? And I was like, okay, open mic. And I went up and, and I even was like, which Supreme Court justice, I was quoting of the, you know it when you see it, and I'm talking about pornography. I was psychotic, and I wrote them this very strongly worded letter, like that this sign needs to be removed, and I went to sign it. By this point, I had roped 2 of my friends in, and they were named Christy and Kat. So I'm going to sign this very militant letter with like, "Love, Destiny, Christy, and Kat." Ain't nobody gonna be afraid of us. So I was like, what if we like say we're like a feminist group? And so it was literally like I was writing a screenplay or something, and I was like, what about New Wave Feminists? That sounds like a thing. And they're like, yeah, that's a thing for sure. And so like, New Wave Feminists, like they should be afraid we're gonna Molotov cocktail them now. And they'd be very surprised by the mugshots after we got arrested, like these 3. And so then they changed the billboard. And they modified it, and at that point, I was drunk with power, like the wheels were off, and I was like, what else are we gonna do? And we did more things. But that's when I kind of had the reckoning of my very strong pro-life convictions with the fact that I'm a feminist as well, and I can't even tell you which one came first. I'm pro-life because my mom could have easily aborted me, and a lot of people would have deemed that the responsible choice. I'm a feminist because she didn't abort me, but her life became exponentially harder because of that. So both coincide together quite a bit. And I don't know that I realized the fight that I was picking when I created the MySpace page, which is what I still think of New Wave Feminists, by the way. We're a MySpace page that got out of control. But we started kind of, finding a lot of women who said, I'm a feminist too, but I'm kind of not welcome in these circles. I'm not told because I believe in literally bodily autonomy for every body the moment that it first exists, that I'm welcome in these circles. And so we're like, all right, well, let's party and let's hang out and whatever. And then it just grew. Then in 2017, I had some wine one night and decided that the Women's March on Washington was happening. And I was like, I'm reading all these articles that pro-life women aren't welcome at this. but I can't find like a citation for that. And so I was like, well, who says? Do we actually know this, or is it just assumed because it's sponsored by Planned Parenthood and things like that? So like I said, mine happened, and then I get on their website and I'm like, apply for sponsorship. And in the description, I said, while we are anti-abortion, here are all the things that we agree with you on. I'm a huge Never Trumper, immigration, like all these other things. And so when, by the way, I love the fact that I could just say I was a huge Never Trumper and not feel really bad about it, because I also speak at a lot of Republican groups, and that's normally when everybody's like, all right, we're gonna go to the bathroom. So, but I made it very clear, and then I went off to Marfa with my husband for like our anniversary, which that's where hipsters go. If y'all don't know, here in Texas, it's this little artsy dirt town like 12 hours away. There's no internet there. We got a hotel room that had a bicycle and a typewriter, but no blow dryer. Like, it's that type of ridiculous town. And all of a sudden, we're coming back home from this trip after a 2-day weekend. I get a phone call and people are freaking out. They're like, y'all are on the Women's March website as a sponsor. And I was like, I mean, we didn't sneak on, like, how legit? That's while we are anti-abortion, and so it's kind of amazing. I thought for sure it was a clerical error, but for 4 glorious days, we were on their website, and then I was speaking to a college, closed my laptop up, my phone immediately rings. It was from someone from Rolling Stone, and they were like, hey, we need a quote on y'all getting kicked out of the Women's March. And I was like, this is news to me. This just happened 32 seconds ago. Like, you're gonna have to give me a minute. And I didn't really have a quote. So what I did was I looked at it like a breakup. And I'm from the 90s. And so when you break up with your boyfriend in the 90s at a Chili's, you will play a lot of really sad Boyz II Men songs. And so I posted on our Facebook and I was like, hey boo, it's okay, like, it's not our time. And then I posted like End of the Road or whatever by Boyz II Men. Very stupid, but by the way, that's our brand, so don't ever follow us, we're done. But like 2 hours later, this friend of mine sends me a video of Meghan McCain on some Fox show reading this stupid thing that I just wrote and like chuckling at it. And by the way, she didn't even mention that I linked to a Boyz II Men song, which that part was kind of rude because then the rest of it didn't make sense. But it was still obviously the stupidest thing that I've maybe ever written. And Meghan McCain's reading it, and in that moment I was like, what is my life right now? What's happening? I didn't have an assistant, so literally it's like every media outlet in the world called me for like 2 weeks. So I'm talking to somebody's like HOA for their newsletter, and then the New York Times is leading in, and BBC and NPR. And in the beginning, it was actually more conservative leaning groups that wanted us to badmouth the Women's March, and we wouldn't do it. My running joke was like, I owe them a fruit basket. Like, they're the reason I'm getting so much attention right now. I love it. I'm here for it. And then we were able to talk about the consistent life ethic. And the more that we were talking about it, you could tell the more left-leaning groups were like, wait, this is the type of pro-lifers we've been demanding the whole time, right? Because I think so often they say, oh, well, if you're gonna care about the child in the womb, what about the migrant? What about the person on death row? What about all this? And I was like, we've been out here. Nobody's paying attention to us because it doesn't fit in narrative, right? So getting to speak about that then opened up these avenues to talk to kind of more left-leaning groups. And just like they challenged us to be consistent in this avenue, it became time to challenge them. You say you're pro-choice and you're not pro-abortion, but what are you doing for other choices besides abortion? Because I'm watching the city of Austin give $100,000 in their budget to abortion services, not childcare, not any type of like education, mentorship, housing programs, the things that one needs to truly have a choice. And bizarrely, people started listening. By the way, I normally have purple hair. So that's another part of it. Everyone should dye their hair a weird color because it also kind of makes you undercover. When people will listen to you for a second because the words coming out of your mouth don't match what they're saying. And it's very confusing. It's discombobulating. I'm sure it's like a world of war. But I'm an anti-war activist, so I'm allowed to use that. So that put us on the map. We really grew from there. I would speak at colleges. We help a lot of young moms. So moms call me all the time who, my power's been turned off, things like that. We help them in that capacity, but we're still a relatively small organization. And then a few years ago, we started working with families that were leaving detainment on the US side of the border because a friend called and said, there's this Catholic Charities down there. I don't know if they know Sister Norma Pimentel, but she said that there were they were running short of bottles. They needed baby bottles. And I was like, well, we can try to do that. The year before Hurricane Harvey had hit, and we did tampon haul. I know this is a very male room, but I'm gonna normalize that word right now. Anyway, we did the giant Texas tampon haul, and we actually received so many tampons and so many, like $10,000 worth, where I was going to Costco myself, because everybody was up here at the shelters with these huge crates of massive tampons. And we filled up all the shelters. They're like, please no more. Nobody menstruates this much. And that's the point where we were like, we need to start throwing these in the water, like the flood water, to get it to receive. Because so much cotton. But it kind of shocked us. All of a sudden, we're like, we raised $10,000 for tampons. That was wild. So maybe we should use this power for good. And we ended up raising $10,000 for bottles. Obviously, more than bottles, diapers, formula, things like that. We took it all down to the border. And then the next year, we decided that, maybe it would be, we kept seeing people online say, pro-lifers don't care about migrants. And somebody would say, well, New Wave Feminist does, they're doing all this stuff. And okay, one group, like the goalposts are always gonna move. And so we're like, all right, well, let's have more groups do it then, I guess, I don't even know. Again, this is all a weird experiment from a MySpace page. And so we opened it up to like 50 other pro-life groups ended up signing up. And this was kind of like right in the heart of the Trump year. So I was actually kind of surprised how many groups were willing to sign on. But we had Republicans, Democrats, the ASP was also one, libertarians, and then a lot of smaller organizations, and we raised $135,000. And somebody donated a truck for us to use to haul supplies down, and we were, just like the tampons, we had so much extra. I'm like, we can't buy more bottles and milk and all the things we need. We were like, we're just gonna make grants to a lot of these shelters along the border, sheltering people. I hate to say this, but it feels like New Wave Feminist kind of has a monopoly right now when it comes to helping migrants. Like, we're really the only group that's pro-life and pro-migrant. I would love some competition, so if y'all would like to start doing that, that would be amazing. Iron sharpens iron, or whatever y'all's book says, and then we'll make each other better. It'll be a really good thing. But through that process, again, we kind of realized there are people who don't align with, usually, they're pro-life, so they're on the right, but don't align when it comes to migration, because this is truly about loving your brothers and sisters in Christ for many of them. And so then I get a call from the woman who's now my very best friend, but at the time she was just a weirdo yelling at me on the phone. And she called and she said, I'm down here at the border, I run this shelter in Juarez, and I'm so sick of trying to ask pro-life groups for help or, just scraps, like anything. I think at the time, they needed like $300 to print off maps to how to get to their shelter for the migrants who didn't have homes and stuff like that. And this was gonna last them like a year. And groups were just like, I don't know, we'll have to have a board meeting about it. And it was just like this runaround type stuff. At the same time, Planned Parenthood came to her and said, we'll give you $10,000 if you let us have access to your shelter and come in and speak to your women. And most of the women at her shelter at the time were pregnant through sexual assault. So on their journey up here, they were sexually assaulted. That's how they became pregnant. It would be so easy for Planned Parenthood to come in with this very Western kind of American narrative and say, well, that wasn't even your choice. You should obviously terminate. And she said, I just as a pro-life feminist, I can't do it. I can't open the doors to them. And yet I need that money to keep the lights on. We need that money to keep feeding people. So I was like, all right, let me see. I don't know if we can raise $10,000, but we can see. In 1 month time, we raised $43,000. We were able to put like a water tank in and all of these like long-term things for this shelter. And then for the next couple of years, we worked with them, same thing, like being kind of this avenue of, if you care about migrants, especially incredibly vulnerable pregnant migrants, like they're here, they just need help. We needed to get their stories out. And so that grew into that. That was at a Catholic diocese. They ended up shutting down that shelter. And because this is an experiment in my MySpace page, and I'm just kind of an idiot person in general, I didn't realize that we had set up a PayPal account specifically for that campaign we had done. And so somebody donated their stimulus check to us. It was $1,400. And I didn't see that hit any of our accounts. And I was like, oh crap, is this just going off into the ether? Did I mess something up? Because I don't have an assistant and I shouldn't be allowed to do things. And maybe it was a password I forgot. Anyway, so I spent 2 days looking and I find an account with $20,000 in it. And I was like, whoops, look what I just found in my pocket. And so I was like, we have to do something with this money. It's all earmarked for Juarez. And so Karina, my board member, she said, okay, well, we're gonna try to find a spot to rent so we can there was a surge happening. We'll do an emergency surge and feed people for a couple months and stuff like that. as we're looking, we find the perfect place that they were gonna rent us, and then they were like, or you can buy it, and we're like, we can't buy it, and they were like, try to buy it, and so we're like, okay. And we went back to our base, which again, we had raised money with 50 other groups that one time. We had raised $135,000, but this shelter was gonna be $300,000. And we were like lucky to have $10,000 in our bank account. I like it that way. I should not be trusted with money, obviously. So like this worked for me. But in a matter of a month, we were able to raise $200,000, actually in 4 hours. And for any of you Catholics, if y'all like want a really good Catholic story, it happened, I'm very agnostic, but I will acknowledge it happened in this super weird Catholic way involving Our Lady of Lourdes. And so I'm actually, I know it's a different one, but I'm going to Mexico City for my 40th birthday to thank the Guadalupe Mary because she's doing weird stuff. Okay, I acknowledge science, but I'm going to acknowledge that too. So anyway, within a 4-hour window of time, somebody goes and prays at Lourdes, a woman who wrote a book about Lourdes. And then I tell my friend this story about Lourdes, and it was like $200,000 was raised between those three things happening. So, and then the rest was raised on like $5 and $10 from like our base of these amazing people who want to be invested in this vision. And since opening, by the way, when you're buying property in another country, it takes 1 million years to do it. So that finally happened February 6th. We have already helped over 100 women and children receive asylum legally, because that's also a big part of what we want to do. We don't want anybody to be exploitable when they get here. So we want them to have the proper documentation, support system set up. 100 women and children have already crossed over. Our shelter's been featured on 60 Minutes and that John Oliver show. It's doing amazing stuff. The hope is that in the next few years, we're actually going to set up a whole clinic side as well that offers full pregnancy and reproductive health care, obviously sans abortion, but just to the community of Juarez themselves, and then lactation classes and fertility awareness classes, body literacy classes. Like, we really want this to be a hub of community support as well as a shelter. And it's a giant mansion. I painted the kitchen pink, and we're on our way, y'all. It's a really cool space. So I ran out the clock. I have 1 minute left, so I don't have to answer anyone's questions. But thank you so much for having me.